Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Jonathan Kaufman. I'm one of the co-founders at Third Plateau and have the honor of being your moderator today. This is our second session on transformative practices in achieving an equitable and sustainable local food system. I'm really excited about this afternoon session. We have got a handful of truly amazing guest presenters. We've got 5 guest presenters that are all going to talk about some interesting work they've been doing in that effort to build these equitable and sustainable local food systems. We're going to move through them relatively quickly because we want you to hear from all of them, really showcasing some success stories in community-based programs, environmental practices, farm to fork, fair labor, promising research, school feeding programs, lots more. I'm excited for you to get to hear it. We will do our best to have time for Q&A at the end, but time is short. If you do have questions, there's a Q&A feature and we'd invite you to use it. Feel free to post questions there and we'll do our best to answer them. With that, I'm going to turn it to our first speaker. So it's my honor to introduce Malika Noko, is the Assistant Cooperative Extension Specialist in Soil Plant Water Relations and Irrigation Management at UC Davis. Malika, I'll turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited for this conversation. So I study crop water use, and I really am thinking about this in the lens of how can we think about transformative practices for both land, water, and food production all at the same time. And I'm going to ask everyone to take a look at this painting behind me here. So this is a piece of art by a local artist of the Sacramento Valley. His name is Miles Herman. And what we see is just a gorgeous agricultural landscape, right? There's several different colors, and these colors here are representative of many different crops. And one thing I love about California as someone who is from the Midwest and a transplant is that there's such a diversity of different crops here. And as somebody who studies water, it's very challenging actually to think about how we can build effective tools to manage such a diversity of crops and think about irrigation management, because as many of you know, this is a pretty arid environment and it requires a fair amount of irrigation to grow many different crops. I mean, there are some crops in California, depending on where you are specifically, where we can do rain-fed management, but for the most part, many of the crops need some sort of water replacement or irrigation in order to grow and to have an achievable and harvestable yield. So as an irrigation extension professional, what I think about is like, all right, well, how can we help growers understand exactly how much water a different crop needs? And the way that we do it and the way that we've done it for decades and decades is we use physics. We use environmental biophysics. And this is my background. This is what I studied in school. And as an environmental biophysicist, and as someone who studies crop water use, or as we call it, evapotranspiration, we got to figure out how to measure this, right? And I'm going to tell you how we measure this. Look at this grid, look at all of these colors. So we think about, for the most part, each of these colors or each of these different crops as basically one big leaf. And we've thought about it this way for maybe 40 or 50 years. And we call these algorithms or models that we use to understand crop water use big leaf models. And this type of science has advanced and developed, and now we're using satellite-based models. We have a system of tools in the state of California to help growers better understand how to manage their water. And they're all kind of based on this physics that's evolved from these big leaf models. And that's really interesting and exciting. And I've been working on these big leaf models. I've been thinking about, all right, like what's the next thing that we have to do? How can we improve their subtlety and their nuance to manage for different types of years and different types of interannual variability? But then I had kind of like a big existential moment because as a part of my extension, function and program, I have a podcast. It's called the Water Talk Podcast, and I'm going to ask to drop a link to a particular episode in the chat. And this episode is with a community partner and collaborator and scientist named Dr. Ruth Dahlquist Willard, who's incredible. And she is a cooperative extension advisor who works out of Fresno. And we had this conversation, and she really works to serve small farmers from a variety of communities. So Black, Asian farmers, Latinx farmers are really, that's who she works with. And she works with people who are not necessarily farming in this way, right? So we started to think about, okay, what are some of the tools that different types and different visions and different people need who we would like to welcome into agriculture and who are doing really phenomenal and exciting things in terms of their soil management practices, in terms of rotational practices that don't look like this. And that's when I had my existential crisis, because my physics started to fall apart. All of a sudden, the 50 years of physics that are based on big leaf models, they don't necessarily work for these types of agricultural, very innovative and exciting agricultural systems. So Dr. Ruth Dahlquist Willard started asking me these questions like, well, what if we wanted to do a better job managing water on these agricultural systems and these farms and help these farmers? Are there tools out there to support them? Boy, this was a really tricky question. And the answer to it was, I realized that a lot of the tools and a lot of just this whole kind of science, like industrial complex in a way, wasn't serving a particular group of growers, and it wasn't serving different types of agriculture. So we started to develop and think about how we can better serve different farming systems and different groups of farmers. And I don't have results to show you yet, but what I do have is a new way of thinking about it in terms of, instead of going at it in this big leaf way, we're still using some of those physics, right? So instead of just one big leaf being these different types of fields, we've got this drone now. So I work a lot with drones. So here's my drone, one of them. And I think about precision agriculture, which is kind of a techie idea that's gained a lot of traction, and how we can use some of the tools and some of the ideas from precision agriculture to serve diverse groups of people and diverse types of farming, and really think about how we're transforming our soils and how we're potentially transforming our food systems. And what we're basically doing is, I'm still using, in a sense, the same type of physics, right? The same big leaf models, but instead of just singular fields that are grown in kind of this like monocultural way within a field, we're able to use the drone imagery to really grid up and create a very high resolution image with thermal imaging or thermal imagery and multispectral imagery. And each of those pixels is now a way in which that we can measure crop water use. So now we're kind of developing these tools that could potentially serve a system and serve a grower that has multiple crops growing in a small area. And I'm really excited about this project. It's something that we are embarking on, and it's something that I hope will be transformative for the way in which we think about food and water together to serve a variety of different growers in our state. Thank you very much.
Oh my goodness, absolutely fascinating. Malika, thank you so much for sharing. I've got 10,000 questions for you, but I also have got some other great speakers and want to make sure that we can bring their perspectives into the conversation here as well. But thank you for letting us into your world and getting showing off the drone in a picture and getting to talk about how you're challenging some of those long-held beliefs of how to think about the science behind the work at hand here. All right, I would like to welcome up our next speaker, Leana Sleha, who is the program director at AgStart. Leana, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. And thank you to the summit organizers for the kind invitation. Hopefully you can see my first slide. Great. Well, I'd like to tell you a short story of transformation. It's about why and how AgStart opened the lab at AgStart, a new incubator in Woodland for food startups, for food system startups. It's about diverse stakeholders who formed a unique partnership to transform our region's food and ag innovation ecosystem. There we go. Well, as you know, there are many challenges to reaching a sustainable and equitable food system. Technology innovation is key to achieving these goals. And innovation can benefit all food system stakeholders, from producers to consumers. New technology can implement at small or large scale, locally and globally. And it's an exciting time for food system innovation. The number of startups is on the rise, and so is investment capital. AgStart understands food system innovation and entrepreneurship. Our mission is to accelerate food system startups through mentorship, education, community, and connections. We opened a shared office in Woodland in 2015, but we learned we could have a bigger impact by providing shared lab and kitchen resources. Well, why is this? Well, this requires looking at how startups grow and scale. Well, food system startups need more than a great idea. They need proof of concept and minimum viable product to gain traction. Science-based startups need access to resources like wet labs and greenhouses, all while having little capital. So affordable wet labs are a key factor to startup success. And it's the same thing for food startups. Food product startups need access to licensed commercial kitchens to develop new ingredients and to produce prototype products. This while being cash crunched. So affordable kitchen facilities are a key factor. We knew our region had shared wet labs and kitchens, but were there enough? So we asked our friends at other shared wet labs in the region. They are Collaborator, Inventopia, and the UC Davis H.M. Klaus Center. We learned that they were full with long waiting lists. We also spoke with UC Davis, a top university in food and ag, and we learned that the campus spins out at least 10 startups in the ag, food, and health sector every year. So we concluded that, yes, there were insufficient shared lab and kitchen resources, and that our region would generate demand well into the future. We also knew that foreign food system startups seek a landing spot in the California market. By 2018, AgStart itself had hosted international members from Chile, Spain, and Israel. By 2018, we also started to notice that the lack of lab space had reached a critical point. We saw stories like this one in the Business Journal about companies leaving the region due to the lack of lab resources. So it was clear there was strong demand for shared lab and kitchen facilities, and we needed to act. So now the second part of our story, how we grew support and raised funds for the lab at AgStart, is built on AgStart's strong relationships in the regional food system. So AgStart has had a strong relationship with Yolo County and the city of Woodland since locating in Woodland in 2015. They have a reputation for ag and food excellence through efforts like the Food Front. Core to these efforts is fostering and attracting startups. And AgStart is a strategic partner in these efforts. So we presented our concept for the lab at AgStart to the city and county, and they welcomed it. This gave us the momentum to apply for grant funds. AgStart also knew the U.S. Economic Development Administration because we had been a partner in a prior EDA grant. So we reached out to our friends at EDA, and they helped us identify the best grant vehicle for the lab at AgStart. This grant required matching funds. So we approached the city and county, and we were extremely grateful when they approved our matching fund requests. And last fall, AgStart was awarded an EDA grant for the lab at AgStart. In parallel, we began discussions with two organizations that care deeply about the food system, the Yoshodehe Winton Nation and Raley's. Agriculture and land stewardship is central to the Yoshodehe Nation, and we were very grateful to be selected for a Doyuti Takama grant to sponsor the shared wet lab. We also knew that Raley's and its owner, Mike Teal, value sustainability and local food. We were ecstatic when Raley's agreed to sponsor the commercial kitchen at the lab at AgStart. AgStart also has a relationship with many of the global seed players that are located in Yolo County through our participation in networks like Seed Central. So we were delighted when Bayer and Syngenta donated 2 full laboratories of equipment for our shared wet lab. We're also extremely grateful to these regional sponsors. First Northern Bank, an agribusiness lender, provided a low-interest loan guaranteed through the California iBank. First Northern also sponsored our conference room. Ag Biologicals pioneer and entrepreneur Pam Marone sponsored our break area. And I'm excited to announce our newest food lab sponsor, PGB International, which has a big presence in Woodland. The $1.5 million lab at AgStart opened in May. It's the only combination shared wet lab and commercial kitchen in Northern California. Despite the challenges of the pandemic, we have greatly exceeded expectations. A dozen companies are using our facility, and we calculate that 12 new professional jobs have already been created. The Yoshide Lab is a 2,500 square foot BSL-1 shared wet lab with 6-foot lab benches for dedicated use. The lab has state-of-the-art shared equipment, and lab members receive AgStart business mentorship services, use of common areas, as well as investor introductions. Raley's Food Lab is a certified food facility where innovators can develop new food products, ingredients, and recipes for taste testing, sampling, and small volume sales. It has state-of-the-art fixtures and appliances. The Lab at AgStart is a story of transformation, the result of a public-private effort grounded in AgStart's strong presence and history in our region. We'd love to give you a tour around, so don't hesitate to contact us, and please let us know how we can help you in your transformation efforts. Thank you.
Leona, thank you so much. Really fun to get to hear more about the work you're doing. I spent a lot of my time thinking about and working on innovation, and collaboration is such a key aspect to any of this working. It was really fun to see specifically, Yoshide Wintomation and Raley's come up in your conversation, as both of those organizations and efforts came up in our morning session too, as really helping to drive a lot of the innovation in the region. So it's nice to see the network is alive and working well, and everyone's connected on it. So thank you very much. I want to move on to our next speaker, Katherine Carolee, the former Associate Dean of Seattle Culinary Academy and the founder of Community Loaf. Katherine, I'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for letting me share a little bit about this grassroots effort launched in Washington to supply food banks with freshly baked bread. What started out quite small is turning into a bit of a supply chain that our food bank pantries are benefiting from and needing. It's a little bit like that hummingbird feeder you put out. You create something that you really need to keep feeding day in and day out. Listen, my clicker, Jonathan, doesn't seem to be working. There it goes. Is it working now? Okay. So just real quick, what are we doing here with Community Loaves? My clicker is on this screen, and it's inconsistently clicking. There we go. So what is our mission? To connect, train, and empower home-based bakers to reduce hunger at local food pantries through the donation of freshly baked, nutritious bread. This started in the time of the pandemic, although the need at food banks has existed long before the onslaught of the pandemic in March of 2020. So they've always needed a program like the one that we've begun. We find ourselves connected through this effort by purpose, a need to make a difference, by our own personal love for baking, and by a shared desire for supporting the local grain shed and sourcing ingredients locally. This effort started around bread, specifically because bread brings people together. It's a safe product to donate. In the states that we're operating, we can bake fresh this bread out of our home-based kitchens without the extra effort of a cottage license or specific food handling skills. As long as these items do not require refrigeration, they are safe. These ingredients are relatively inert, very low risk. Good bread is needed. Most of our food banks, especially those that have grocery rescue, get bread, but it doesn't meet very high nutritional density standards. Bread skills are validating, so it's something that you can create community around and train and inform. There is really little substitution for a lovely loaf of freshly baked bread. And it allows me to follow through and our group to follow through on being a value add to the local grain economy by creating a standard around using and sourcing those ingredients. Our community loaf is pretty simple, but everybody who bakes for us, and we're just under 1,000 volunteer bakers in our organization, uses a standard formula. So it's a sandwich loaf by design. It's approachable, familiar, can be sliced up into 14 slices. That's 7 sandwiches. It tastes great. It's got 100% whole grains and high extraction flour. It supports, again, that mission, Cairn Spring Mills in the Skagit, as well as Fairhaven, Hillside Grain in Idaho, and Gastones. We have multiple formulas for our bakers to choose from. We consider ourselves an equal leavening opportunity organization, which means if you want to use commercial yeast, you've got our blessing. And if you're a purist and you want only straight sourdough, that's fine too. Our loaves are tasty, and the food banks are just ever grateful for the love and care we've put into making something that is not only nutritious, but passes the KID test. That's the benefit of having a little oatmeal porridge for softness and some extra fiber, as well as some honey and olive oil. We train our bakers. So we're just shy, like I said, of 1,000 volunteers in our network. Everyone who starts in with our program attends a mandatory information session that allows us to set a bar. We all have to work from the same recipe and format. We have some special donations that we give to our food banks. Come here in Thanksgiving time, we do a dinner roll donation. We have videos to help inform bread baking skills. So for someone who's just a novice and has no prior experience, they can onboard themselves by watching those baking videos. Training through and connecting through social media, of course. And then we have various additional support through Bake With Me sessions. Now that most of us have been vaccinated, we can get back together in small groups, and virtual baker debrief sessions as well, because we're getting spread out in multiple states. And then we're piloting community kitchens now in different areas where we can gather people, and they also represent freezer banks, so we can store more loaves that will then get donated to the food bank. Education, we do train. I said we had an information session. We ask our bakers to all use a nutritionally dense set of flour. That's whole grain and high extraction flour. Many of them don't have a foundation for what that means. So we share this. I share this chart with them from Unified Mills showing the nutritional density to help get them in alignment with using these kinds of flours for flavor, for performance, for nutrition, as well as for supporting the local grain shed. Within the next 12 months, we will have purchased 90,000 pounds of flour for this project, which is, I think, pretty incredible, given that we had zero purchasing of flour prior to that. Let's see, where are we? think I've scored that point. Training is important to us. It supports product consistency and confidence at the food banks. We want this, the clients of the food banks to really feel like they are receiving something that is high quality, that is respectful, that is nutrient dense as well as calorie dense. And for our bakers, we want them to feel empowered and validated by the contributions that they are making, and to gain baker literacy around this project. Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. We have now 4 hubs in Idaho, so I'm pretty excited about that. I'll go back to that slide for a second. How our program works is that all of our bakers, of course, bake in their home kitchens, and then on donation day, they take their loaves to their nearest hub. We have about 52 or so hubs, growing to 56 here in the next couple of weeks. Those hubs aggregate those loaves, and from there they are transported to the appropriate food bank in their area. Some of the bread friends that I have gathered over the last 6 years who helped me with the training and the effort that is now become Community Loaves. A key to this for us, and some of the things that we don't know in terms of how long this project, this grassroots turned nonprofit will last, is what's the life cycle of a volunteer baker? How many contributions do they want to make? When do they get tired of it as a project? How do you keep them engaged and coming back? And we think community is key. We think validation is key. We think that adding some variety and diversification to the product is relevant. And we're working on next phase steps for all of those efforts so that our volunteers feel really nourished by these loaves as well. Our goal, it was simple. When I started this, it was all about doing something in the time of pandemic. I have a natural love for baking. I've been baking bread for a while, and I gathered a few of my friends and said, hey, let's do this because our food banks are struggling, and even more so in the time of the pandemic as their supply chains were disrupted because they couldn't do the grocery rescue. They couldn't get those volunteers inside the facilities, and they had to do these really extreme pivots. We donated 19 loaves on our very first donation, just 5 bakers, and we've grown to 26 food banks instead of just 1. And 45,000 plus loaves of bread have been donated through 41 donations. It's about 500,000 sandwiches, if you want to measure it in sandwiches. What is interesting about this chart is shows the need. So we currently have 26 food bank partners, and you can see our bread in the yellow. The gray is the capacity at the food banks at any particular donation time. So what our food bank partners could and would be happy to receive, say on the last donation we made is in the area of 6,300 loaves. And so even though I love that we donated 2,000 loaves on that particular Sunday, it represents, just 30% of the capacity that the food bank could take on that day. So the room is there for us to do more. Our food banks are very grateful. They seem to be exceptionally thankful. Their clients now ask for that bread. Is it one of those, we'd only donate twice a month at this juncture. So they will sometimes get confused by that and wonder, do you have any of those community loaves this week? Which is very gratifying to hear. And we take a cue from this post that came out from Washington, in the Washington Post, that food security is just one thing. Nutrition security really has to be the long-term solution around the work that we are doing. And so for Community Loaves, what's next? To expand to other cities, enrich the partnership with our food banks, create another bread formula, have some printed bags, train the trainer programs, work on homelessness items, and create some new outreach programs for those bakers. And that's it. That's what we're doing with Community Loaves.
Katherine, so fun. You offered one data point of, just on the off chance that we want to measure things in sandwiches, and I'm now making it my life goal to try to measure more things in sandwiches. I'm all for it. We got a question from the Q&A that I'd love for you to spend a second to talk about if you can. Questions about how you're navigating or addressing the idea of culturally appropriate baked goods as you start to work in different communities. Has that been a conversation at all that you've navigated?
Yeah, I love that question. And the answer is yes. And for us, that will be in terms of the additional baked goods that we could layer on and offer our food banks, whether it is, I'll just use tortillas, for example, or other products that communities relate to more effectively than sandwich loaves. We've been on a fast track for the last 18 months, and we're still moving at breakneck speed. So, but it is a conversation that we have had with our team and will be exploring. It is a difficult conversation when we're not even filling the capacity of the need that is at the food banks right now with the items that we have.
Well, thank you for sharing, and congratulations on all the success, and excited to see what comes next. I'm going to keep us moving and turn it over to Sarah Bernal, who's the West Sacramento Urban Farm Program Manager at Center for Land-Based Learning. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you so much, and thanks for having me. This is a great summit, so I'm really honored to be here. So I have a set of slides that'll be presented more as detailed information about the program, the West Sac Urban Farm Program, which is a part of the Center for Land-Based Learning. But my talk is a little bit more broadly describing the community that we serve and the challenges they face, and then sort of like how we have addressed some of those challenges. So the slides and the talk are not like directly correlating to each other. So take your time looking at them and reading them. But yeah. So today's youth are the first generation in American history that is slated to die at a younger age than their parents. And I start here to paint a picture of the reality being faced by many communities like the one that we serve in Broderick, West Sacramento. So Broderick has been deemed a food desert, and according to the USDA, food deserts relative to all other census tracts tend to have higher rates of abandoned or vacant homes, residents who have lower levels of formal education, higher unemployment, higher poverty rates, and have a greater concentration of minorities. So in short, food deserts have limited food access and are characterized by higher levels of racial segregation and greater income inequality. So relative to other households, we've understood that low-income households living in these food deserts have to allocate not only higher shares of their income, but also higher shares of their time budget in order to access nutritious food. So a key concern for people who live in areas like Broderick is that there is limited access to full-service grocery stores. There's a lot of convenience stores and corner stores, but they typically don't carry healthy foods that would help you to sustain a healthy diet. And when they do, those items tend to be of lower quality and a higher price than you would actually incur at a typical grocery store and or supermarket. So for many low-income areas, we also see what some people call food swamps, which are essentially, areas where we see a fast food chain across the street from another fast food chain and a corner store selling mostly soda and tobacco and alcohol. And that's like ubiquitous to the environment, but you try to find a high quality fruit or vegetable, and it is literally impossible. So I'm positing that we can absolutely influence what happens in the way that our communities are designed by prioritizing subsidies, empowering residents through meaningful employment, and providing financial incentives, which would require us to think holistically and also apply public pressure on our elected officials. So for example, we saw policies in the 1940s where victory gardens were sprouting up like crazy, leading to 20 million home gardeners growing 40% of the nation's fresh produce. So the government had printed materials. They were teaching the public how to grow and like how to grow and what to grow during which parts of the season. They were providing seeds and other assistance to educate the public. But those policies didn't last after both agribusiness and seed companies started lobbying against them. So despite the deterioration of that type of government support for home agriculture and urban agriculture, we are absolutely seeing a resurgence of people taking interest in the food sovereignty movement, which pretty much is like talking about community-based solutions that take into account sourcing and producing safe, culturally relevant, nutritionally adequate foods that are sustainable and that value social justice. So in this way, urban agriculture has become a way of reintroducing the public to the many aspects of food that we've all lost as a culture. So how does food grow and what grows regionally and what's in season? You know, all these things are lessons that make our urban consumers a little bit more well-informed. So urban farms have the ability to be the front line of the food system in this way in terms of urban spaces, but in order to ensure you know, long-term economic sustainability to inner city growers, assistance similar to the financial supports available to rural farmers, such as crop insurance or crop subsidies and loans, are still needed so that these businesses can survive agriculture's hazards of both market slumps and also climate disasters. So additional public and private funds are needed to incubate economic opportunities to generate new markets for urban growers. So when we look at these challenges, some of the largest barriers to successful urban agriculture are going to be in zoning restrictions, access to land and water, soil contamination, exorbitant costs of water when compared to agricultural rates, access to tools, to coolers, to equipment, to technical assistance, and also to qualified labor. So a misconception is that small-scale urban agriculture can serve as a tool to reverse food insecurity as a social enterprise, which means that it should generate enough profit to cover its cost of operation. But this is very highly misleading. The cost of production of the most commonly consumed fresh vegetables, such as, let's say, potatoes, is based on efficiency and scale, and thus relies on trained field workers that have access to mechanized tools, trucks, and scale to a size that keep prices low. So if we want urban farms to help cure food security, they must be subsidized by either cities, counties, public health departments do it in different states, housing authorities are doing it in different states. But right now, as it stands for our nonprofit program, it's continuous grant writing and fundraising. And also, most importantly, collaborating with partner agencies. So the West Sac Urban Farm Program, which you've been seeing some pictures of, is a part of the Center for Land-Based Learning and is both an urban farm business incubator as well as a pioneer in the food security movement in Yolo County. We launched a state-of-the-art mobile farmers market in 2021. Our farms are growing an average of 30,000 pounds of fresh produce every month. We have 5 sites that cover 7 acres of land. And by providing land and water and mentorship, tools and a cooler, introduction to markets, and peer-to-peer support for up to 4 years, we have generated a whole new generation of farmers. And yet, almost all of our farmers need to maintain another full-time job in order to make their ends meet. So for us in our programming, our closest consumers are our local residents. And like I mentioned, most of them are in Broderick Bright. So 4 of our 5 farm sites are in this most low-income census tract. So how can we ensure that we open up new market opportunities that can pay our farmers a fair price for their produce while still reaching food insecure low-income residents? And so here's where nimble operations like the mobile farmers market come in. We purchased this truck using a CDFA refrigeration grant fund. And this mobile market is the first of its kind in the region in that it is unique to other operations that exist across the country because we're not only distributing the fresh produce this way, but we're also growing it ourselves. So the average produce on a supermarket shelf travels 1,500 miles and our produce is traveling less than 5. So having control over the production of the crops is allowing us to grow culturally relevant crop varieties that are specific to our community's needs. This year, during our pilot of the mobile market, we were so shocked by seeing 50 pounds of okra fly off the shelves in 20 minutes and 250 pounds of tomatoes selling faster than we could literally stock them on the shelves. We even had one loyal customer that would just come out every week to buy our Indian eggplant because he swore he had not been able to find Indian eggplant of such excellent quality anywhere else. And so why is our produce flying off the shelves now? There are a lot of answers to this question. For one, and I think the key thing is that over 80% of our customers are using SNAP. And thanks to our market match benefit program, we are able to offer our SNAP customers 50% off all of their purchases. So for the first few weeks, our customers would shop, then we'd ring them up and they'd realize in awe that they can afford to buy so much more than they thought. Many times they'd ask if, can I just not pay right now, keep shopping? So of course we allow that. And as weeks pass, we've been tracking and seeing a steady increase of the volume that each customer takes home each week. So this 50% discount and our ability to accept SNAP are instrumental to increasing the affordability and accessibility of this product. The fact that we drive our mobile market directly to where people live has also proven to be a major asset to many residents. So whether they're single parents without childcare, or families without personal vehicles, or individuals experiencing health challenges, meeting residents where they live has proven to be a major asset. So one of our stops is at a senior affordable housing complex. And it couldn't be a bigger joy to serve. Our seniors have shared with us that due to the pandemic, they haven't felt safe going to the grocery store, and a lot of them don't have access to a private vehicle. So using public transit felt really, really scary to some of them. One of our most loyal customers, Miss Jackie, she just let us know the first week we were there in July that she hadn't had any fresh fruits or vegetables in almost 9 months. She's receiving cancer treatments, which meant she's extremely susceptible to infection. And so Miss Jackie has our cell phone number on speed dial and calls us every week so she can put in her order and we can literally walk it over to her front stoop, which is 30 feet away from where we park the truck. So seniors on the verge of tears are also seeing crops from their native countries that we've grown this year with the same quality that they remember coming out of the home gardens that they used to have themselves. So it's really just got to be one of the most moving things that I've seen in years is just the success of this model. Resident engagement, information sharing, doing surveys, hosting community meetings where we hear directly from residents have all been happening and will continue to happen with an incredible partnership from another local org called the Health Education Council. So shelf-stable pantry items like olive oil, rice and beans, pasta are provided free of charge to any of our shoppers through a partnership with Yolo Food Bank. So we buy those things at 19 cents a pound and then we give them to our residents for free so that they can complete an entire meal at our mobile market. So by working with affordable housing complexes and our senior housing complexes, we're able to serve about 900 residents in 3 weekly stops during this pilot. So imagine the possibility if we were able to have more mobile market trucks and increase our capacity by hiring more staff. It's taken a village to turn this idea into a reality, and this winter we're designing a resident ambassador program where we hope to learn from the community and share info about what's going on in our local food system. These ambassadors are then going to be hired and paid as staff to help operate the mobile market, to help give us input on inventory and provide information to their friends and neighbors. So if we could continue to grow this mobile market, sourcing from hyper-local growers who can custom grow culturally relevant crops, focusing on areas with high percentages of residents receiving SNAP, continuing to offer market match, hiring local residents to become operators of these markets, and then continuously listen and engage with our community, we truly stand a chance at generating a more sustainable local food system. So in closing, we may not know what tomorrow looks like, but we do know that we can do better. Together, embracing our local community, our local growers, our unused assets in both resources and human capital, we can absolutely change the narrative, and our next generation of youth do not have to face this same reality. So thank you for the opportunity.
Sarah, thank you so much. Absolutely fantastic. I really appreciate the dive into the work that you've been doing with the team. I've had the privilege of knowing the Urban Farm Program and Center for Land-Based Learning for several years. And something that I'm always struck by is just how intentional every last detail is thought about how we build a better system and how we better meet our community where they're at and get them what they need to live the lives that they want to have, build better habits and all of these great things. So just stay super impressed by all the work you're doing and the team. So thanks for letting us in for a little bit.
Thank you.
I'm gonna keep us moving for our final speaker of this session. This Amber Scott, the CEO of Food Literacy Center. Amber, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Hi there, I'm Amber and I'm the founder of Food Literacy Center, and we are a nonprofit that inspires kids to eat their vegetables. And we're here in South Sacramento, and we just moved into our new cooking school in Sac City Unified School District, and I'm going to talk about that more in a little bit. I'm gonna see, there we go. So our mission is to inspire kids to eat their vegetables. And we do this in multiple schools at our Sac City Unified. So we are serving Title I schools, which are schools that basically have the highest need, because we are trying to actually combat childhood obesity and type 2 diabetes. So we're trying to essentially improve children's health by ensuring that they don't get sick in the first place, because we have 2 generations of Americans that are not cooking with vegetables, and we know that only 4% of our kids are protecting their health by cooking with vegetables. The result is that we have a 40% childhood obesity rate in the Sacramento area, and we know that this puts our kids at higher risk for type 2 diabetes. So by inspiring them to eat their vegetables, we hope that they will get excited to eat healthier. My slides aren't advancing, so there they go. I'm just I want to jump ahead to talk about the cooking school that you're seeing a blank wall behind me, because we've literally moved into a project that has been 6 years in the making. And it's a really unique project talking about sustainability in our community and transforming our community. So one of our schools, Leotata Floyd Elementary, sits across the street from Marina Vista Public Housing. So the average household income in that public housing complex is $8,000 a year for the household. And so this Title I school, Leotata Floyd, is actually one of the lowest performing schools in the state of California. It's also one of the most segregated schools in the state of California. And they built this school for public housing, so the kids would never have to leave the neighborhood. And so at Sac City Unified, the data on the percent of the budget that is spent on Title I schools as opposed to the more wealthy schools in the district is 11%. So it's a very small percentage. And so the kids who need the most resources in our school district are often the kids that are not receiving them. And so at Food Literacy Center, we had this amazing opportunity to take a 2.5 acre vacant lot that is across from Marina Vista Public Housing and right next to Leotata Floyd. The school district owns this lot, and the city of Sacramento was working with a local developer, and they decided they wanted to turn this lot into a park. And the way that school property works is that you can't simply sell it. So it has to stay within the school district. And the city wanted to turn this into a park that would be more like a farm, and including a half acre of community garden plots. And the school district said, well, it would have to offer programs to students. So we need to maybe find a nonprofit partner who is willing to provide those programs. So they approached Food Literacy Center, asked if I would be interested in that. And I actually said, you know, a farm is nice, but what our students really need is a cooking school. And somehow they said yes. And over the past 6+ years, we have been working with these massive bureaucracies to get them to coordinate and partner and actually build this cooking school. So at first we thought we were maybe going to get a portable, and my clicker's not working, so unfortunately it just sits there. So hopefully somebody can advance the slides for me. Basically 6 years ago, we thought they were just gonna maybe put an old portable on our lot, and maybe we'd have some toaster ovens. But over the years, as this project advanced and the players at the table within the school district, within the city, it really began to capture everyone's hearts, and everybody really became a true champion of this project. And so we had these amazing meetings where we did not know how we were going to fund this, but today we have a 4,500 square foot zero net energy cooking school, and it's absolutely stunning. What's exciting about this, during COVID, Food Literacy Center, who we have traditionally taught hands-on cooking classes in elementary schools, and during COVID, we actually switched our model because there was no cooking with kids, because there were no kids, because there was no school. So we had to transform our entire nonprofit. And so we took the recipes that our kids loved, that they had been cooking with us in our program, and we turned them into take-home recipe kits. And we passed those out alongside school lunch distribution. And so parents would drive up and they would get a recipe kit, and they would go home and they would cook with their kids. And the kids were familiar with these recipes, but the parents had never cooked them before. So it was the first time that we got these healthy recipes inside the homes of our families. And we found it actually to be quite transformational, because finally, these parents and grandparents were eating our broccoli potato tacos and our rainbow soup. And they actually fell in love with these foods just as much as their kids. We had parents telling us they ate oatmeal for the first time, for example. And so, so to give you an example, prior to this cooking school, which we literally just moved into last week, we're still unpacking boxes. Prior to this, we were working out of a little portable on the school campus, and we had 2 refrigerators. With those 2 refrigerators, we have been able to serve over 11,000 recipes to these families. So imagine what we're going to be able to do with this 4,500 square foot cooking school, where we have a walk-in refrigerator and freezer. We have dry storage. We have a commercial kitchen. Here is a picture of the site. This is the 2.5 acres. We've literally transformed this vacant lot, again, right next to public housing, right next to a Title I elementary school. And this facility is now permanent. We worked inside of 2 major systems, and we got both the city of Sacramento and the school district to commit to prioritizing student health. Food Literacy Center paid $0 to have this built. The school district built it with fees from the developer who actually has houses that they built across the street. So among all of these partners, that's what made this project possible. And it's been quite a lot of work to move the bar, but now this is permanent, and this is going to help build resilience in our food system in this neighborhood, but also it allows Food Literacy Center to expand. We've already been serving about an average of 8 elementary schools at Sac City Unified in a year. But now what we have expanded space, which means we'll have additional capacity to reach more kids, buy more broccoli, and expand our programs. So we couldn't be more excited to move in. We're still under construction. We're not open to the public quite yet, but it's been a very long time coming. These projects are not easy to pull off. And again, it's a permanent feature, so it's going to be here forever. And it's a cooking classroom and a kitchen. There is no other use that this facility has. So we really can't wait, because this is a permanent reminder of the commitment that both the city and the school district have made to our kids' health. So we're really excited. And as rates of food and nutrition insecurity increased during the pandemic, we know that those rates are not going backwards. We are continuing to see high need. So we actually, even though we've returned to in-person cooking, we're going to continue to deliver and distribute these take-home recipe kits that we started during the pandemic, because we know they're needed and we know that the families love them. So we want to keep getting that healthy food into our homes. And our kids, just so you know, recently we were rated by an elementary student as 10,000 out of 10. So hopefully that gives you a sense of how much our kids are excited to eat these recipes. So we also at Food Literacy Center are hiring. So I just want to put that word out there. We have, we're looking for an operations manager, as well as eventually someone to help us build this farm out. So the farm on this project is still a big 1 acre piece of dirt, and we have really exciting plans for that site, but we're going to need somebody to actually help make it happen. And the city's Parks and Rec department is also part of that project as well. It will be a city park as well as for use for the students at Leotata Floyd. So thanks for learning about our project, and feel free to contact me if you have questions.
Amber, so fun. I remember way back when Broccoli HQ was just a crazy idea in your head and you're trying to get people bought into it. It's amazing to fast forward and see it here and see an actual wall behind you. So massive kudos and congratulations on all of this. It's so exciting to see, and can't wait for kids to be in there doing all of this. I would love if we can actually get all of our panelists on the screen here. Would like to open up for a couple of questions while we have a minute or two. My first question to all of you, really open up to anybody who would like to talk about it. One of the primary barriers to good innovation and really transforming the way that something works isn't to have the creative idea, it's to get people bought into that idea. And I would love if any of you have reflections of how you, like, who you had to get on board with your idea early on, and how you went about doing that, getting it from sort of that, you know, that idea that's in the back of your head to actually getting someone who's saying, hey, there's some potential here, let's go do that.
I can tackle from the perspective of the mobile market, which was, you know, so that mobile market truck it's an amazing piece of infrastructure. It, you know, it's an $87,000 truck. Did our nonprofit have $87,000 lying around? No. And the California Department of Food and Ag had a grant that was open for corner stores to put refrigeration units into their corner store so that they could, you know, supply fresh produce at their corner store. And even though the intention of that refrigeration grant was meant for corner store refrigeration, I just contacted the grants manager at CDFA and said, you know, we're an urban farm program, we don't have a brick and mortar, but would you consider this innovative approach of using a refrigerated mobile farmers market where we could then just drive it directly to affordable housing complexes and that way reach more and more people? And, you know, graciously, the California Department of Food and Ag grants manager said, you know, that's not at all what we had in mind, but, you know, let's give it a shot. And so they funded the mobile market for us. And then we shared our grant application with the truck manufacturer, and 6 other cities have gotten the same truck using the same grant model through CDFA's refrigeration grant. So that was a really cool way to use a funding pool that wasn't really the intention.
Love it. Thank you very much, Sarah. Anybody else want to share? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I was going to say the short answer to that question is everyone. Truly, it takes a village to pull off. I mean, even just the small project when we were just the cooking class in one school, the number of people that came to, you know, talk to the school to say, yeah, they're going to be a great program. It's somebody we trust, that we can trust with your kids, to, you know, helping raise the money to, you know, even just on that small scale, let alone this massive project like Broccoli headquarters. So I think for me, it was continuing to talk about, I mean, just the constant drumbeat of, we're going to do a thing. Here we did a thing. Tell 5 people we did this thing. What other 5 people can I talk to about this thing? Right. So I do think that ability to get in front of as many people as possible, and eventually they put you in front of the right people. So it takes a village, truly.
I like it. Just playing the numbers game. It's always a good strategy. Well, we are at time, so I want to extend a very, very sincere and heartfelt thank you to all 5 of you. So thank you so much. Malika, Leana, Katherine, Sarah, Amber, truly amazing stories. Thank you so much for sharing them here. Wish you nothing but the best and excited to see what you go transform next. So thanks everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.